So you've got this idea or this dream or this goal. What do you do to get closer to that goal? If you're like most people, you walk down the path of what I like to call the way. And we'll break down exactly what that means and looks like. But the point of this video is to show you that there's actually an alternative, the whirl. So in this video, I'm going to break down the way, the whirl, the effect that the whirl creates, and how it can help you get closer to what you really want. So when we want something, when we have this goal that we're trying to achieve, there's often this path that we feel like we're supposed to take. And like I said before, I call this path the way. I first want to say that the reason I take issue with the way is because we don't interrogate where that dream or that desire or that hope even came from. So often we're just absorbing the fact that someone else had a kid or wanted to be a lawyer or build a business or buy a house. And we assume that that's what we want to, that's what we're supposed to want. So the idea of the way can be flawed from the start because what we're walking towards may not actually be something that we want. And once we start walking down this path of the way, for many people, myself included, it becomes restrictive. And we take this creative process and turn it into a series of steps. And we try to make it really linear, even though as humans, we know that life is not linear. And so when we take steps forward and steps back, we feel like we're failing and we're doing something wrong. I've talked around the way. Let me break down the 3 steps of the way. So the first piece is that we feel like we have to start with the answer. I have to know exactly what I want. I have to know how I could scale this into a multi-million-dollar business. I have to know what type of music I want to create or what I want my job description to be in the next part of my career. And when you pair this idea that you have to have the answers to begin with, and then if you're someone who has perfectionist tendencies or are a rule follower and you think that the way is the set of rules that you're supposed to follow, then you end up stuck right here at the beginning trying to find the answers, thinking that the answers are going to come from more research or from more digging, when really the answers come by taking action. And when you think about it, this gets internalized in us from a really, really young age. Think about it. How young were you when someone asked you, what do you want to do when you grow up? And it's not that anyone really expects a 5-year-old to know exactly what they want to do when they grow up, but the line of thinking is still that you should have an answer and you should make your big decisions based on knowing exactly what you want. So if by some miracle you get the answers that you feel like you need up front, you move into the next piece, which is activity. And I would actually argue that a lot of times when we're trying to get everything figured out at the beginning, we're not giving the answers of what we want. We're giving the answers of what we think we should want, or what we think is going to make that other person or that organization or that community happy. We're giving the answers that we think are going to give us an A in the test of life. So we say, yeah, I want this big business with tons of employees. Or you know what? I actually don't want to be an artist. Or I'm really interested in doing this thing that is more appealing to the masses. It's not that any of these things are inherently wrong. I just find that sometimes when we're rushing to get to the answers first, we give the answers that are most convenient, and then we go into a flurry of activity. And a lot of times the activity is just another form of us doing the things that we think we have to do. So I'll see people, and by people, I mean me, I'm people, do training courses because they think that that's the only way that they will be seen as legitimate enough to do what they want. Or they'll start posting on every social media channel because they think that's the only way to get people engaged with their work. And these activities are keeping us busy, but sometimes they create a sense of false progress that's really procrastination. We think, when I get this thing, I'll be ready. And then we get that thing, and what happens? Oh, wait, no, I just need that thing. And then I'll really be ready, right? And really, we're doing these things to feel like we're enough, or like we have enough, or like we know enough in order to move forward. Which brings us to this last piece, which is achievement. So if you do enough activities in some combination, you get what you wanted. And this is supposed to be the top of the mountain. You've gotten it. You're at the end of the path. This is what is supposed to fulfill you. This is what's supposed to tell you that you are accepted and that you can finally accept yourself. And yet we see that there's often an emptiness here. It's like, oh, I put all of my energy and my momentum into this thing, why do I still feel insecure? Or maybe your experience is more like this. I checked every box that people told me to check. So now who am I without another box to check? So this thing that is supposed to be celebratory can lead into crisis. But this is what's been internalized in us, right? That we are supposed to have the answer up front. And we're supposed to do these predetermined activities. And then the pinnacle moment is supposed to be achievement that is going to solve all our problems and change the way that we feel about ourselves. As you're listening to this, you probably know from experience that this doesn't always feel the best. And what I see for myself and for others is that when we're stuck in the way as this default mode, we have these inklings, these whispers of desires that just stay stagnant because we feel like we don't have enough of an answer, or we get caught in this loop of activities, or we finally get there wherever there is, and we feel disillusioned by what we got. I don't know about you, but this is not where I want to live. When I'm at my best, the path of the way is not how I operate. When I started mapping out how I get to the things that feel most fulfilling in my life, it materialized into this framework that I'm calling the whirl. I like calling it the whirl because it reminds me of the idea of giving it a whirl. It feels a little silly. It feels a little lighthearted. And it's exactly that lack of self-seriousness which gets us going. It makes things possible. I also like this idea of the whirl because when I looked at whirls in nature, whether they were whirlpools or tornadoes, or even to a certain extent, black holes, they're powerful. They draw things towards them. And when you start to move through this process that's cyclical, you create this momentum. And it's not like you have to go get something that is outside of you. You are the center point and you start bringing things towards you. And that's what's possible through this creative experimental process called the whirl. And as I draw it out for you, the first thing that you're going to notice is that it's not a straight line. It's a cycle. You just keep moving and learning and whirling and things become clearer. Things start to get closer to you. So let's walk through the 3 elements of the whirl. We'll start here with awareness. And awareness is not having the answers like we saw with the way. Awareness can be as simple as knowing you have a question or that you have a desire or a piece of an idea, something that you want to explore. We can overthink awareness and default back to the way. And we think, oh my gosh, I have to know everything right now, right at the beginning. I have to be able to map out an 87-point project plan. This is simply saying there's something here. There's something that's drawing me and I want to see where it leads. I've had inklings where I have a feeling like, you know what? I want to have my own newsletter again. Or last year, I had this weird urge to have a funeral for one of my ideas. So you might notice a theme that you're really drawn to ways to express yourself artistically. Or you might just have a question. I wonder what it would be like to have more community in person. Could be a desire, a little bit of an idea. And the key here, if you want to create the whirl effect, is that you can't overthink awareness. All you need here is to know enough to move forward. And from there, you're ready to start shifting your energy into action. And there's 2 things that you do as you're shifting your energy in this way. You first need to make a decision. You decide, yeah, this is something that I want to explore. You're not signing your name in blood or anything here. You're not saying I need to become the foremost expert in paper making. You're just saying, yeah, this is something worth directing my energy toward, and I'm going to do that now. There's power in naming where you want to direct your energy. That is part of how you harness it as being a force of nature, rather than having your creative energy be this thing that makes you feel like you're all over the place or like it's pulling you in so many different directions. There is power in directing your energy. And so once you make that decision, you start to prepare for action. And that's where the clear framework can come in. I have a video all about clear. And what I think about with clear is that you're creating this playground. You're creating a space where you can play with your ideas, your desires, your wishes, and you're just defining how you want to explore it. And really that clear framework, clarity, levity, experimentation, accountability, and resources is what moves you from awareness into action. Unlike activities, you are deciding what you want to do and how. You're not intertwining it with your self-worth. And as you're in this place of action, you really need 2 things, recalibration and regulation. So within that clear container that you created without having any context or firsthand experience, you'll probably realize you need to make tweaks. Maybe you thought something was going to take you a weekend, and now you know it takes you a month. and you got to shift accordingly. Or maybe you figure out that people take longer to respond to emails than you thought, or that information you're drawing from gets updated less frequently than you thought it did. Or maybe you realize that you were taking yourself too seriously and you got to find a way to lighten it up. Or that you bit off more than you could chew and you got to break it down into even a smaller increment. This is just part of whirling. As you get more information, both internal and external information, you got to keep recalibrating. That's not a failure. That is you taking action and getting out in the world and giving things a whirl. There's also a need to regulate. It can be hard to finally take action and then not get the results that you expected. You might feel disappointed or confused or disillusioned. Sometimes momentum in the world is moving slower than we expected, or it's drawing things towards us that we hadn't previously considered. Or maybe things are moving faster than you expected. All of those require self-regulation. And I built a whole body of work around that called Inner Workout if you want to check it out. And so there's this dance that you're doing of knowing when to recalibrate and when and how to regulate. And eventually you get to attainment. And attainment is different than achievement because it's not saying that we get exactly what we set out to achieve. What it is saying is that you got something. You got more information. You got an end product. Maybe you got a short story that isn't as brilliant as you thought it was going to be in your mind, but it's something. It's a starting point. Maybe you got a product and people liked different parts of it than you thought they were going to appreciate. But you got something, and it is worthwhile to spend some amount of time, it's going to be different for someone, just sitting and appreciating what it is that you have and what it took for you to attain this thing. And then eventually you move towards a new level of awareness by reflection and integration around what you learned through the process. So maybe how you're feeling now is different than what you thought you would feel. And then you have this new awareness. And the more that you move through this process, you notice that awareness begets action, which begets attainment, and things are in motion. Your creative energy acts like this flywheel. It becomes this vortex, which is another type of whirl, where things start coming to you. Opportunities that you didn't realize were available start coming to you. This is what happened to me when I started doing my very first podcast. I just had this sense that I wanted to podcast, and then people started inviting me to speak on panels. And I realized that was something that I liked. And I took action around that, and now speaking is part of what I do for a living. Another time I said yes to this little inkling I had around a request for proposals for facilitation. I hadn't even realized that facilitation was something that I'd done previously, but I followed it. And then as I did that, someone else said, "Hey, do you want to facilitate over here?" And facilitation became another big piece of the work that I do today. So when you honor that awareness and playfully give things a whirl, unexpected things can head your way. So that's it. That's the Whirl Effect. It is not overly complicated, and something that has been so helpful for me in the relatively short time that I've been working with this framework is just to name where I'm at in the whirl. And what I find is that when there is a sense of resistance or stuckness or like stuff is getting in the way, I've often shifted from whirling and giving things a whirl back into the way. So instead of focusing on awareness, I try and get all the answers at the beginning. Instead of taking action in this experimental way, I try to do the right activities in the right order without leaving space for recalibration or for self-regulation. And I get so focused on achieving that I'm not able to appreciate what it is that I have attained and that I have in front of me. So giving things a whirl is the work that I do. It is the work of my personal creative practice, and it's also the work that I'm lucky enough to do as a coach and as a facilitator. I help people move from awareness to action, from action to attainment, and from attainment back into awareness to gain that momentum and to get closer to what they really want. And so before YouTube autoplays to the next video, I want you to just take a second and answer for yourself. What would it look like for me to give something a whirl? Today, this week, this month, this year? I'd love to hear all about what you're giving a whirl in the comments.